All right. So, hello everybody. Welcome to this is our 6th session, believe it or not.
Wow.
This is how it works. I mean, it keeps on, I guess we don't recognize it, but, as you put in the time, and on a weekly basis, we start covering a lot of grounds. I mean, we are technically at the 6th session with from a poetry perspective. We are and I think I don't know if I shared this already. We have read about 250 lines, so that's a lot of progress, believe it or not. For those of you who may, I don't know if you guys track this or not by yourselves, but it's a lot of progress because we have discussed many different objectives and attributes and ways of looking at the stories which Rumi has presented us. And this is great. So thank you and congratulations to all of you. So I wanted to real quick because Sunny was out, and for the right reasons. I'm not gonna ask why. I have to tell you this, I'm going to keep track of these things. This is just the way I am, because I want to make sure that we're all following the same way. Can we discuss what, somebody, I know, Mateen, Rasul, Mohsen, you guys have been around. What was it that we discussed last time, just from a story perspective? Where did we go and how did we end this story? So somebody go.
I remember that the goldsmith was murdered and because it was poisoned and was gone.
Okay.
And the saint said that it was all God's plan for him to be gone.
Okay.
That's how I summarized it.
And we
that was a very, very, very quick summary. I need a little bit more elaboration. Okay.
So at one point, there is probably not enough time to get into depth, but it all depends on the person's personality, how one presents any idea. So that summary really goes with my personality. I don't do.
I get it. We're gonna hopefully, this is the class that we come out of our comfort zones. So eventually we'll get you out. So
I can talk about the king a little bit. I think it said that the king did not kill or did not do this move because of his desire to the girl. And I guess at one point he compared it with Khizr and Moses and the wisdom of Khizr about doing stuff that in surface looks terrible, but it has some deep meaning and deep good reason behind it. That's also I remember for what we discussed.
So let's go down that path real quick. So do you remember the parts of the story of Khizr that we talked about?
I think I do remember that we talked about the ship that he made a hole to sink. And that is and I guess the logic behind was at the end, he cleared that it was a king on the other side of the water that he would basically capture all the ships and wouldn't give it back to the poor people. So he did it so that the ship never gets there. That's what I remember.
So he wrecks a bunch of ships so that the king would not have access to them. That's correct. And then he does another thing, of course.
Kills the boy.
He
Yeah.
Kills the
slits
boy,
the
yeah.
boy's throat. Very good. Okay, and then there's another third one that, if you guys remember,
He builds the wall. He allows the wall to fall.
exactly, so that he will protect a treasure, so that the rightful owners to the treasure would actually get there. Okay, awesome. And Rumi brings this example to us because what is he trying to tell us? What does he want us to understand?
I guess he wants to say we have to get to the depths of the things and just don't judge it on the surface, or think more, or I do not know. I think from those stories, at least we get the point that everything has two sides. What is what you see, and the other is obviously much deeper and much more, reasons.
Okay, very good. So what he's trying to say, as you said, is that there is a face to everything, and then there is of course, the meaning behind the face, which sometimes it's apparent to us, and sometimes it is not apparent to us. And if it's not apparent to us, we need to be patient and trust that what's not apparent to us, eventually, when the right time comes, we will know. Am I correct?
Yes.
So he specifically, mentions this in the conclusion of the story of the king and the slave girl and all that stuff. One other thing that we discussed was that if we were to internalize these four characters of the story, which was the king, the goldsmith, the girl, and also the saint who actually came, and we talked about them a little bit. Anyone wants to jump in? Mateen, you want to give us a quick?
Yeah, the king was the soul that was going through the journey. So they went from a regular soul to an enlightened soul. I forgot what the words were.
Or we use the words spirit versus a soul, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the girl was the heart.
Right.
The GPS had to be pointed in the right direction.
Exactly.
And the goldsmith was the ego.
Awesome.
That had to be killed so that the heart could point in the right direction.
Okay.
And the mystic, or the person who was person who came in response to the king's sincere prayer, was the divine intervention, or revelation, or something like that.
Right. And that divine intervention, or the message from beyond, started showing to the king that who the true lover was, if you remember, right? And it was the fact that Rumi made us went through this. There was a specific there's a few lines about the fact that when it comes down to love, we are extremely handicapped to even if we were to describe it. And if I were to find the lines, if you remember, this was the line that we read, which was, love which is based on just a pretty face is not a true love. It ends in sheer disgrace. And that was partly what Rumi was trying to get us to understand. And another thing that he actually went through, and let me just find this other, point regarding if you remember.
Which one are you looking for?
I'm looking for العاشقی پیداست از زاری دل. So leads the doctor, and it's right about here. Okay. Why is it that I can't see it here? Okay, never mind. If you remember, it was talking about the fact that in order for you to understand what love is, you need to ensure that you understand love, but only love itself. You cannot necessarily,
That is 109.
It's thank you. So it said, yeah, being a lover means your heart must ache. No sickness hurts as much as when heart breaks. The lover's ailment, totally unique. Love is the astrolabe, and that's exactly what Mathine, referred to, or the GPS of all we seek. Whether you feel divine or earthly love, ultimately we're destined for above. So it doesn't matter how we actually experience love, whether it is something that is divine in a sense that it is something that we enlarge my screen. Sure, I would. You can also say that here, so I don't necessarily check chats. I apologize. Okay. I guess this is better. Okay. So to capture love, whatever word I say makes me ashamed when love arrives my way. While explanations sometimes make things clear, true love through silence, only one can hear. And the silence that he's talking about is when the mind is completely shut off and the heart is fully open. That is the silence that Rumi is talking about, because our thoughts, the thoughts that engage us with our ego, are not working anymore. So we are at complete silence and peace, and that's how love can actually start working. The pen would smoothly write the things it knew, but when it came to love, it split in two. Okay, so basically this is our real quick review of what happened in the past few sessions that in the past few sessions that Sani was not here. So we left everything right about at this story, the tale about the grocer and the parrot, and the parrot spills oil in the store. It's a simple story with a few, and remember, Rumi is literally setting certain columns in for what he needs. And Sam and Mahdi, I would love for you guys to also turn on your videos if you can. So the grocer kept a parrot in his stall. The bird was green and talked, amusing all. Preached on a bench, it watched the passers-by, sharing a word with those who caught its eye. It knew how to pronounce all human words, spoke fluently with men as well as birds. The parrot hopped down from the bench one day, spilling a flask of rose oil on its way. And when the grocer came back to his store, when he sat down, he stained the clothes he wore. Of course, you guys are following the story. The parrot mistakenly spills the oil. I mean, this must have been an expensive, remedy. On seeing the spill oil, a rage took hold. he struck the parrot's head and left it bald. So he hits the parrot, and the parrot all of a sudden loses his, I guess his hair right about here, and he goes bald. The next few days, the bird refused to speak. The grocer grieved, repentant, now and meek. He tucked his beard. Alice, he cried aloud. He cried aloud. My son of bounty is hidden by a cloud. Would that my hand have broken then instead of striking my most precious parrot's head? He then gave gifts to all the needy men, hoping to hear the parrot speak again. After 3 nights, perplexed and desperate, he sat down on the bench, disconsolate. Then showed the parrot wondrous tricks galore to coax it into talking back once more. A monk then strolled by on his daily route in woolen garb and balder than a coot. I guess that's what he's trying to say, and I'm going to have to just elaborate it a little. So he sees a passerby which is completely bald, and of course the guy is in the poem. It says the guy is a dervish, or somebody who is not as of course he's been passing by and he's not of material. This made the parrot talk again at last. It shouted at the monk as he walked past. How did you end up such a slaphead friend? Did you like me a flask of oil upend? So basically what he's saying is that because he spilled the oil and he went bald, now everyone else who is bald, he thinks that they have spilled an oil. It thought the monk its equal, it was doffed. Don't you compare yourself with God's elite. So right about here, this is basically, he has told us this story. The story basically is talking about a comparison between one experience and what we perceive could have been another experience. Now, in this case, the parrot, the experience is that he has gone bald, and he thinks that whoever has gone bald has been hit in the head by their masters. And what Rumi is trying to tell us is the fact that the very first thing that we need in order to compare ourselves with another, if we were to compare anything, first of all, we have to make sure that we're comparing, as we say in English, apples to apples. You cannot compare apples to oranges. Now, in this case, he's using the word God's elite, and he has a purpose for that. And that is that he's trying to tell us and teach us the fact that those who are close to God, they go through a different experience spiritually than those who are not. And if you are trying to walk in the path of a spiritual journey, if you're on the path of trying to learn about love, and you take a few steps and you all of a sudden go, this doesn't work or anything. How come it worked for another person? He's just like me. That is a bad comparison. You cannot compare that, or you cannot even compare yourself to another human being, because in all fairness, you need to be equals in order for that comparison to happen. So don't you compare yourself with God's elite. Remember, souls just sounds like soles of feet. Now, in Farsi, he's talking about the word sheer. Sheer in Farsi can also mean milk, and also can mean, it also means lion. Now in here, he is using, I mean, the translator is using the word souls and souls. So, which kind of makes sense. And I mean, at least he's trying to bring this in. So if the two things are written the same way, not necessarily they are meaning the same thing. Okay.
These are homonyms in English. It's called homonym.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Because of this, the whole world's gone astray. If you recognize God's chosen saints today. So what he's trying to tell us is that the reason that majority of people are lost is because of the wrong way that they have compared their experiences and the world around them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Those of you who are familiar with a poet named Hafez, there is a line that he has which says, in Farsi, it says, Jang 72 millat hame ra uzr bene. So the translation is like the war of the 72 nations, you have to excuse all of them. And the second, part of the line says, the reason they're at war is because they could not see the truth. So Rumi is also kind of alluding to that in here, that the reality is that people are lost because they could not recognize the true meaning and true validity of God's chosen saints. So they thought that they're equals. This also is part of an ayah from the Quran, which people who were not, believing in Prophet Muhammad, they were saying like, or the prophets, I think it's all prophets, they're saying that we eat and they eat, so we're equals. We sleep and they sleep, so we're the same thing. How is it that, you're saying that this guy is closer to God than I am? And that is something that, sometimes we go through this mistake. So themselves, the prophets equal some proclaim, and that from saints, they differ just in name. So the reality is that they all of a sudden felt, because they look the same and things on the surface, all is equal between themselves and a saint or a prophet. They never bothered to fully understand what was beneath all of that had made that soul a prophet, or that soul was so close to the beloved. We're all mere human beings. We're all mere human beings. They will say, they too must eat some food and sleep each day. That was the explanation. So we do this and they are doing this, the same thing. Their blindness stops from discerning it between the two. The gap is infinite. So the fact is that because they were blind, and in this case, the blindness that Rumi is talking about in here is the blindness of the heart, that our heart is not able to actually see truly what's in front of it. And because of that, they can't see the difference. However, what Rumi is saying is that there is a extremely infinite gap between these two beings. I mean, somebody who is, just a human being or an unelevated soul versus somebody who has experienced closeness to the beloved and to God. Both wasps and bees, those flowers are nourishing. Bees give back honey, wasps a painful sting. So now he's talking about, you know, the different types of bees. He's given an example that there's two different kinds of bees. Ones are the ones who actually does, you know, they actually do hit us and sting us, and that kind of hurts. And there are those who, you know, actually, you know, make honey for us and so forth. They both look the same and they are the same type. I mean, they're both bees. All grazing deer look similar when they are young, but some give musk while others just leave dung. Now he's talking about the deer where there is a specific kind of deer that, you know, there is a musk that they can actually, a very, you know, good smelling musk that comes out of their, I think it's from their belly or belly button. And some of other ones, you know, they don't have that ability to produce that musk. So again, he's using these examples to tell us that things on the surface, they could look the same, but they are different when it comes down to the essence of what they do and what they provide. They're like the cane that you see growing there. One's sugar-filled and the other just holds air. And now he's using another example using the cane, that, you know, some of them are ones that we can, you know, produce sugar out of, and some of them are the ones that, you know, just completely empty, and, you know, we use them for other purposes and so forth. With false comparisons, this world is packed. Notice how different each one is in fact. This is an important line. The fact of the matter is that our lives are, you know, are filled with bad comparisons. As a matter of fact, it impacts us on a daily basis. And Rumi actually brings this into surface, and it's trying to make sure that, you know, it comes to the foreground for us so that we fully understand and get this. For one, the food he ate just turns to shit. Yes. Another shines the light of God with it. Now, in the Farsi word, it's talking about palidi, which is, of course, you know, something of a, you know, a feces or something like that. But, you know, it is what it is. It's not a bad translation, as a matter of fact. So there is, you know, people can eat food, and all there is to it is that food eventually turns into something that, you know, we have to give back in form of feces. But then there are others that they eat food in order to stay alive, and constantly they are providing the light for others. One eats and grows more envious and tight. And in this case, he's talking about the bad attributes of human beings, of envy, and not something of opposite of generosity. And in this case, you know, the word that, you know, it's used here is tight, but it's talking about somebody who is extremely, how should I say it? It's somebody who is extremely identified by the money that they have. Every time that you are identified, let me just give a general statement here about these lines. Whatever we identify with is what we eventually lead into our hearts, and what actually starts defining us. Now, if we identify with materials and materialistic stuff, that identification eventually falls into our soul, and eventually that is what makes us. So if we feel that our identification with money or with material possessions is something that, you know, we dearly want to hang on to, sometimes that is the source of majority of our pains, because anything that we identify with, unless it is something eternal and it is something meant to last for forever, it's gonna sometime, it's just a matter of time that it's gonna go away. And once it goes away, we're gonna experience pain. And that's most of the time what causes our pain in our daily lives, our attachments to things that are not eternal and are not divine. Sometimes we're attached to, our house. Sometimes we're attached to our jobs. Sometimes we're attached to our possessions. All these things are nice to have. Nobody is saying that we shouldn't have them. The attachment is where it actually causes pain, because for us, in order to keep what we have, we go through a lot of pain. And sometimes if things are not looking the way they're supposed to look for us, that even causes more pain for us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So one eats and grows more envious and tight, another one bestows God's purest lights. So, whoever has, put their focal point and focal light into, God's endless energy and endless divine and endless possibilities, that is probably the best remedy for most of our problems these days. Okay, so contrast this good land with that marshy patch. Don't claim this angle and that demon match. So it's talking about, again, what he's giving us a sets of examples of what is good and what is not good. So when you're talking about a land which you can actually grow great crops in it, and a land that is completely, something that's not, there's no possibility of any sort of growth in it. He's talking about compare these two together. And when you look at them, at their essence, there are two different things. When opposites to us the same appear, like sweet and bitter water, both being clear. Now, this, he's going a little deeper into these now. He's talking about what we identify with, how we identify with them, how do we compare things together. And then he's like, this is not an easy task either. We have to understand that every time we compare, we have to have the right elements to compare things with. If, for instance, it's our eyesight only that we're comparing things with, when you look at water, both waters, the one that you drink and the one that it's not drinkable, they're both clear. However, it's only somebody with the right experience, or somebody who is willing to taste it, or has had a vision into how that water was obtained, that can come back and tell us what is it that we can get. So when opposites, so it's talking about when these opposites sometimes show up in our lives, they might be the same in face and how they look, but they're opposites in their true meaning and true essence. So when opposites to us the same appear, like sweet and bitter water, both being clear. Who can discriminate between the two? None but a man who's tasted truth will do. So ordinary people cannot distinguish between something that on its surface, it looks the same. But somebody with experience, or somebody who has gone through an experience of understanding what is, drinking water versus what is not, is some, or somebody who's seen the truth, or who have experienced the truth. Magic and miracles, some view the same, for both to them are just a clever game. Now he goes again another step further into trying to make us understand this. There is a difference, fundamental difference, when it comes down to miracles and magic. We will eventually I think this is in book 3 that we're going to discuss it, but I'll give you guys a preview. Rumi talks a lot about the story of Moses and the Pharaoh, and how Moses, with the cane that he was carrying, was able to at least, bring a show into Moses' kingdom and house that was different than what he had seen before. And during that time, the sorcerers and the ones who were basically doing magic was partly a fashion of the day. So what Moses does is that he's like, this is magic, and I'm going to do the same. And of course, he goes and brings, and this is a biblical and Quranic story as well. You can find it in both Bible and also the Quran and also the Torah. So what happens is that the cane, some magicians, they come in and they produce magic, which brings takes its cane and makes it a snake. And of course, the cane that Moses possessed, because it was fundamentally different and it was connected to the will of God, it was it went in and it then turned into a very massive snake or a dragon, and it eventually ate everything. So he's talking about the fact that magic and miracles in eyes of people who are not who have not opened up the sight of their souls, it's the same. But and they feel it's just a clever game. And anything that comes from the word clever is something that we are actually using our mind for it. So our cleverness comes from our mind, not from our hearts. Sometimes we are, we think like we're just too clever for something. And to us, that justifies a lot of our actions. And Rumi tells us that, this cleverness is something that puts us sometimes in a wrong path, and it shows us the wrong sight, and it makes us do bad things, as a matter of fact. So for both to them are just a clever game. Of course, magicians challenge Moses, friend of God, producing their own versions of his rod. The difference was vast, like night and day. Their deeds contrasted. They were poles away. Their actions earned them curses from the Lord, while Moses earned more grace as his reward. Much unbelievers are just apes no more. Their lying breasts are rotten to the core. Now, in this case, what he's talking about the fact that people who are the word he's using is unbelievers or non-believers, or in Farsi it's called kafaran. There is a fundamental difference about this word when it comes down to Rumi poetry, and that is the fact that and I got it, and I will, every time we get to it, I will try to correct it. The fact that somebody is a non-believer, that doesn't mean that that person is denying God. That means that, that person is questioning, and he has a question. We have, and that's the part that, for all that matters, all of us have questioned on one way or another. and eventually we believe. So we are on a journey of being a non-believer to a believer. We go through that. However, what Rumi is now talking about is the fact that if you're just questioning and you're trying to actually find ways, and you're on the way to find the truth, that is the right and the righteous way. But there are people that, rather than trying to find the truth, he's using the words apes or monkeys. Monkeys are famous for just, repeating something that they see without questioning it. So
without knowing what they're doing.
Exactly. So he's now trying to, come back and say, these are the people, these types of non-believers are the ones that, rather coming back and trying to question and trying to actually investigate and try to find the truth, they would go and rely on the person next to them, or what is it that the mass crowd are doing, and they would do the same. And the fact of the matter is that even these days in our daily lives, we encounter that a lot. We just do. So nobody is coming back. So there's I just want to make sure that, we are not losing sight of, there's a few lessons that Rumi is telling us as we're stepping into this journey. First thing he's telling us is that we've got to go through this with our hearts. The second thing he told us is that this journey is difficult and we're going to have a lot of patience for it. Third thing that he told us is that as we step through it, we're going to get to certain things that may not be clear for us, and we need to have patience, and we need to trust that the answers, when they have to come, they will come to us. And now the fourth thing is, the fourth element that, we're kind of getting into is that we should not be distracted by what is going on around us. And we need to find the truth within ourselves, with our own hearts. Are we following?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, let's get some of you guys involved. Let's start with Sam. Can you hear me? Is Sam there? Okay, he probably is not there.
I'll make a couple of quick observations.
Sure.
The way that this whole story started, I think I can simplify in a simplified way, say something in English equivalent to it, that you cannot judge a book by its cover.
Absolutely.
In other words, the outward appearances usually don't tell you what's going on underneath the surface.
Okay.
Just because they look one way, there may actually be something different. For example, when you see somebody smiling, you don't necessarily know that they're not hurting inside. When you see them smiling, you automatically assume they're happy. They may not be, they may be really in sad shape.
True.
Or when you see somebody give you a handshake, doesn't necessarily make him your friend.
Okay, very good. Those are very quick observations. Yeah. But so my question is, just from what we have learned so far, so somebody who just, gives you a quick handshake, what is it that so far Rumi has told us about how do you determine whether they're friends or not?
Yeah.
I'm asking, what do you think so far he's told us?
Well, don't judge quickly. Be patient.
Okay. Oh, very good. So patience.
Yeah.
So patience is key. So patience is, you have to understand that patience goes both ways. You have to be patient with you, And also you have to be patient with them.
Yeah.
Because eventually the truth will come out.
Yeah.
But patience is key in all of this, because as we, grasp that patience within us, we fully start understanding not only ourselves, but also how things are coming towards us. And in all of this, remember the word that, he was also using is the fact that you need to stay in silence. And silence means that you need to be able to shed off the thoughts which are not helping you. So sometimes, and I'm not saying that you go completely defenseless. That's not what I'm saying. But imagine a monologue, not a dialogue, a monologue that sometimes you may have had. I can tell you that I have had those dialogues.
I'm sorry.
Myself, the monologues. Okay.
Can you repeat that, because you got cut off?
Sorry. So I'm saying, imagine a monologue, a monologue that you've had. Monologue.
What kind of monologue?
Is only purely something that happens between you and you.
Right. Obviously. Yeah.
So let's just say, I'm going to use an arbitrary example. I called someone and that person didn't answer me.
I'm so sorry. You got cut off exactly again when you started talking about the monologue.
All right.
And I'm on my, will you say that one more time? And then if not, I give up. It's my Wi-Fi's fault.
Okay. I tell you what. All right. Can you hear me now?
I could hear everything except literally this part of the whole class. Go ahead.
So the monologue is when the example I'm using is, let's just say that you call somebody and that person doesn't answer.
Right.
And an hour goes by and you still don't get a call and you needed something.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts immediately start racing off to many different directions. I was with him 2 days ago. I said this, maybe he didn't like it. This is how I ended the conversation. Maybe that was not good. Maybe he was offended by this. Maybe he was offended by that. He's done this at this other time, or, your thoughts are going to start bombarding you with reasons to tell you why what you're feeling right now is justified.
Right.
In other words, I've been saying this in my Farsi class a lot. We think more than we breathe. We think more than we breathe. We have only 14 breaths if we do a right amount of breathing per minute. We have 14, we breathe 14 times a minute. However, think about the amount of thoughts that cross your head on a daily basis in an hour, just in 1 hour. Or between as you leave one room and go to the kitchen to get water and come back. What is it that you're thinking about? So our thoughts are completely bombarding us. The fact of the matter is that every time Rumi is encouraging us to have silence, this silence is to just allow this mind to turn off and allow the heart to start working.
Right.
So that we can start comprehending things on that in that way. Okay.
Thanks.
Awesome. So far this is, and he's given us more and more examples and these are just simple examples. He just wants us to start understanding that where is he taking us and how is this going to look? So he says there are such unbelievers are just apes, no more. Their lying breasts are rotten to the core. Now, the second line, of course, is saying that what he means by that is because their hearts is so covered in a veil by their ego, the heart has rotten, meaning that the GPS is not transmitting data or is not getting any data. It's not functioning well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whatever men should do, apes imitate. They try to copy every human trait. Thinking, we copied them so faithfully. Deluded, apes can't sense the way we see. So now he's just talking about the fact that, and apes here are just a symbolism for people who copy things. They just do. And to them, it's just, if I look good, if I deliver good, if I say the right stuff, it is the right stuff, and I can just pass through it. But Rumi says eventually these things will start, showing its flaws eventually for us. So thinking we've copied them so faithfully, deluded apes can't sense the way we see. His actions were from God. There's just a game. So he's now going back to the story of Moses, that Moses' actions were from God, but the sorcerers or the magicians, they were just a game. Those who keep picking fights should all feel shame. Now, the ones who he's referring to, again, the ones who are picking fights are the ones who basically, let me put it in this way. Sometimes we pick fights with God. I'm going to give you guys an example. You guys have heard, texts or short stories or short poems, which may end with, is God listening? Is God watching? And there are times that people have even ended their lives because they think that there is no God, because of what they have seen from their eyes is an atrocity that's happening around them, and everything is basically going down the hill. And they say that if God is who he says he is, he should intervene and take over. The fact of the matter is that this is what, again, this is where Rumi is talking about picking fights with God. And we're not picking fight with God. We're picking fights with what comes to us as tests and exams through God, in order to show us our strength and help us recover from our weaknesses, so we can get stronger and we can elaborate further on our inner sense. Did that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, my team, tell me what you got out of it, please.
Well, I mean, on the one hand, it's being angry with God kind of blinds you from the trials that would actually develop you. But also the apes, in their blind imitation, are like looking at the salt water and the fresh water the same way.
Right. So just out of, since we're talking about this, when I'm sure you've had an experience whereas you felt that things were your way and it didn't happen, or the outcome that you wanted did not happen, right?
Yep.
And this is exactly where Rumi is now trying to get us to, because in this journey, again, what's going to happen is that as we step through it, a lot of things that we think should happen may not happen. Starting off, there is a word which in Farsi we call it qaza wa qadar. Now in English, I guess we can talk about, the a destiny that was imposed, or an action that was imposed on us by God. We're going to get there. So let's say if there is an earthquake. An earthquake in Farsi, I mean, the word that we use for it is that it was qaza wa qadar. It was something that was meant to happen. So Rumi is now trying to get us warmed up to also understand this, the meaning behind this, that what is qaza wa qadar? How do we actually work with that? How do we make it so that this qaza wa qadar is something that we understand it and we don't fight it? Yesterday, in my Farsi class, I was reading a poem, and it had a line, and the line was actually beautiful. I think I have it somewhere around here. Yeah, it said, and I'm gonna say this, is like in the middle of the waves of events that keeps happening to you, in the middle, and he uses the word waves. It's like, as these waves are coming to you, if you stand in front of it, you will be hurt. But if you swim with it, you go through it. I want to make sure that we grasp this meaning, because life throws us curveballs and all that. We hear this expression a lot. There are certain difficulties that just come to us. And in order for us to go through it, sometimes we just don't have to do anything, not stand in front of it. That's the only thing that we have to do. We have to be okay with it and allow it to pass by, and we go through it as well. And it will eventually pass. That's why we always say, this shall pass. What does that really mean? Is that it will pass as we pass with it. We are the one who are using the wave that's coming our way to pass through it. Okay. So whatever men should do, apes imitate. They try to copy every human trait, thinking we've copied them so faithfully. Deluded apes can't sense the way we see. His actions were from God. They're just a game. Those who keep picking fights should all feel shame. Although the hypocrites attend the prayer, it's just so they can start a quarrel there. In fasting, prayer, the pilgrimage, and alms, their those hypocrites make good men take up arms. So now he's given us another, there's a few meanings that he's like, shifting from one to another, to another, to another. So please stay with me. So now he's talking about the word hypocrite. Hypocrite in Farsi means munafiq. And he's talking about mu'min, or the men of God, and munafiq. And he's talking about, I'll just give you guys the gist of the entire line that's here. He's saying whoever from within feels that he's a believer, whether you call him a hypocrite or a believer, that doesn't make any difference for him. Because he knows within himself who he is. But whoever is a hypocrite, if you call him a believer, he's going to be happy. He's going to be, oh yeah, I was able to fool him. But when you call him a hypocrite, they get really mad, because they know within themselves who they are. Okay? So he's talking about the name, as well as what the name means for those who possess the quality that associates with that name and who don't. So in other words, if somebody, this is a psychology concept as well. They say, like, there are things that, like, for instance, if I feel I'm short, let's put it that way. if I feel I'm short, if somebody calls me a midget or a short guy or a little guy, okay? If I identify with that, that's when I'm gonna actually hurt inside. So Rumi is trying to tell us that what you identify with or what you feel that identifies you is important. So the name itself doesn't mean anything until you give its meaning to it. Is that clear? Did you guys get that? I mean, if you have questions about it, ask me now.
I'll ask a question. I
Sure.
mean, I got that, but I also thought maybe I'm not looking at the text, I'm just listening to you. I thought this last part, he was also talking about form over substance, where there's people who go to mosque, church, synagogue, whatnot, and they follow the form, they pray, but if their hearts aren't in it, if the soul, whatever, their intentions are not correct,
Yes.
in manner, it's all irrelevant. Do you know what I mean? Kind
Exactly.
of goes back
And they're
to
hypocrites.
the same
And they're
thing.
hypocrites.
They're hypocrites, and also goes back to all the other when he was using the same word, the words sound the same, but they have completely different meanings. The same thing, you look at two people who go to a place of prayer, they're both praying, but one could literally not be mentally there and be thinking about 5,000 other things, including maybe like things with bad intentions, like whatever, like hurting someone, whatnot, versus someone who is doing the same thing but their heart's in it. So I think that I see more of that than what you were mentioning, but I'm sure
it is. I mean, what you were saying is also another, elaborative way of looking at it. Of course, yes, whoever goes to mosques or synagogues or churches,
right,
and displays that, of course, and then when it comes down to the true essence of his way of living, he's not practicing what he's, basically displaying. It is a hypocrite. I mean, he calls him a hypocrite. And in this case, and he uses his example because he's trying to give what it means to the words. The fact that there are words that you should, and we're going to get to why. Again, the next story that we're going to start, and I don't think if we can start it tonight, but it's going to be next week. In that story, he talks about a Jewish king, and he uses the word juhud. Now, juhud in Farsi is a very offensive word for Jewish people, okay? And Rumi he uses this word intentionally. He's not using it unintentionally. And the reason he's trying to do this with us is because he wants us to understand who we are and not be understood by the words that some people may use in order to identify us. So when I read this story in Farsi, I had one Jewish person who was in the class, and she did not say a word, or she didn't express displeasure, and she's continuously coming. But there were other people who did not like it, and they left. So Rumi is trying to tell us that even being bounded by words are things that can bound us. And if we are bounded by them, and if we're chained by what we perceive the meaning of the word is, we're chaining ourselves. He wants us to completely free ourselves from all of this. Okay. So
I like to give another example. See if this will fit in all of this conversation.
Sure.
It has to come from within a person itself to identify what they are, who they are, before any of these things make sense to them or it doesn't make sense to them. For example, if somebody, by all accounts, by everybody, all experts, is a narcissist. But the person himself doesn't realize that he is one. You tell him he's a narcissist, he's going to.
Rasul.
Why do you say that I am?
Okay. You're right. And so here's the deal. There is, I'm only going by Rumi's words here. I'm not trying to interject my own opinion about this.
Yeah.
Why would we want to tell somebody that he's a narcissist? First of all.
No, I was just using that as an example. Instead of telling him why you're going to mosque, why are you praying, why are you?
We cannot. So here's where the delicate position that Rumi is putting us at is. Somebody who goes to mosque, I'm not going to question the fact that why is it that they go to mosque. Rumi wants us to open up our eyes and understand and realize the meanings behind all of this stuff, rather than just saying that, oh, so-and-so goes to mosque, therefore he's a trustworthy person. He's going to give us many examples later on from religious people of how he actually Rumi uses very foul language about some of these guys. He uses this very foul language that they take a copy of the Quran with themselves and they preach, whereas they don't believe a single word that they're saying.
Yeah.
He is trying to open us up into finding the truth for ourselves and seeing it as it is. Meanwhile, completely allow our surroundings to do what, it's not my position to come back and tell somebody that, hey, you go to church on every Sunday, what have you learned? None of my business, really. None of my business. When I do that, it's not my heart talking, it's my ego challenging his ego.
Yeah.
And there's nothing good that's going to come out of it. However, if I'm about to go into business with him, the fact that he goes into church on every Sunday should not overshadow everything else that I need to do for my due diligence. You see what I'm saying? We need to understand the meanings behind everything rather than the title or the names. So, believers will be led to victory, while hypocrites will pay eternally. And in this case, why he says that they will pay eternally is because their true face eventually will be unveiled. And once it's unveiled, it's going to put them in a position that they have to either correct themselves or explain themselves, which is not a good position to be in. Although it's the same game those two groups play, they're chalk and cheese like those from Merv and Ray. Now, chalk and cheese that he's using in here in the Farsi word, it says what he's trying to say is that they're both doing the same thing. However, the hypocrite and the believer, they both are doing the same thing. However, Merv and Ray is a town in the western part of the country, and Marv or Merv in here is a town which is on the eastern part of Iran. What he's trying to say is that their true intentions are night and day difference, or west and east difference. I mean, there's a huge gap between these two. That's what he's trying to say with this word, with this line. Each one where he belongs at last you'll find, since each fulfills the name he's been assigned. And again, you know, eventually the believer is going to be the believer and hypocrite is going to be the hypocrite. If called believer, he'll end up much higher. Those labeled hypocrite just feed the fire. And the fire that they're going to feed is the fire of their ego. His essence earns the fire, his essence earns the first loved one as name. His failings give the next the loath all blame. So in this case, he's talking about the fact that the believer is somebody who eventually be the loved one, and the non-believer is the person that's going to be the loathed one, or the one that is not in the same position eternally when it comes down to the judgment, or from an let's say the position of how high they have elevated their souls. The name believer itself worth not. It only signifies a person's thought. So this is what we were talking about. The name itself doesn't really worth anything. It's just what actually the person does, which signifies what the word means. Call somebody hypocrite and he'll protest, as if a scorpion stung him in his chest. If this veil name has not emerged from hell, why then does it possess its taste and smell? So again, you know, he's talking about if the name of that we tell a hypocrite is something. So he's now going back to the fact that when a hypocrite hears that name, the fact of the matter is that because of his internal, what he is internally, because of what he is internally, he possesses this hellish criteria and hellish attributes. This hellish attribute starts burning him from inside. Call somebody a hypocrite and he'll protest, and as if a scorpion stung him in his chest. If this veil name has not emerged from hell, why then does it possess its taste and smell? The words referent letters don't decide. Don't blame the bowl for what contained inside. So now he's using the words itself as far as, you know, they're just words. It's just like as if a bowl is not at fault when it holds something sweet or something bitter. Okay. The bowl's mere form, its content, meaning, look, all meanings form the mother of the book. And that now he's talking about the fact that if you want to understand the meaning of all the words and all the forms, you have to start reading into the mother of books, or in this case, this is all the religious books or the holy books that have come to us, meaning the Quran as well as the Bible and the Torah. The planet's different seas are enjoined as one. God's fixed a gap they don't encroach upon. I think you guys have seen this video of, there is a specific area, I think it's in adjacent to Africa, where there is two different seas that's, they are right next to each other, but they don't mix. I mean, they're completely separate in color and even in taste. And, basically, he's saying that everything, when it comes down to it, God, if God wants the essence of things to stay separate, he would keep them separate no matter what. Their origin, however, is still the same. Transcend them all and make their source your aim. So it's saying that no matter what, everything's origin is still the same. Or in this case, the example of the seas, he's talking about their origins are the same, but what they actually eventually carry is something different, and God specifically has made it in such way. There is a reason he's using this example. You guys will find out as this we read this next section. To check that this is not counterfeit, you'll need a touchstone to be sure it's gold indeed. So now he's talking about, so we talked about the fact that somebody goes, just as I'm elaborating on the example that we talked about, somebody goes to a mosque. How do we know that that person is actually a good person or a good-hearted person? So he says that you need something to actually measure gold with in order to understand that the gold is not a counterfeit. It's a counterfeit. It's something that's of substance. If God should place a touchstone in your heart, you'll then tell doubt and certainty apart. Now he's saying that if God was able to actually, and in this case, I want to replace the word touchstone with another word, which something that you can measure everything by. I don't know if that word even exists in English. If it does, help me. And
what is it in Farsi?
Mahak.
Like
So
that.
in Farsi, let me explain what I mean by that. So in Farsi, let's just say that in order for you to test, Mahak means test. Okay. So in order for you to test whether something is truly gold, there are certain, there's a certain, scale that you may use, that scale would determine the weight of the gold. Mm-hmm. Okay. So they call that Mahak.
Actually, Mahak determines if it's gold or not.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So, but it determines that because we're able to measure the attributes of the gold, or right. what signifies the true weight of the gold. Okay. I don't think if we have that word in English, or at least I haven't found it yet. So I think she went for her dictionary.
No, I went, you know what I'm thinking? There's an English word I'm thinking of, but you know what? I don't even understand Mahak. My Farsi is so bad. I want to see if the English word is correct. So before I even say it, because I don't think it is.
All right.
That word, go ahead.
Well, you know what? No, that's totally different. I was thinking of alchemy, but that's like turning something.
No,
alchemy turns it into gold.
Yes, alchemy, we're going to get to that later on. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. So just for now, take my...
Mostly, if I may interrupt, I think
yes.
In English, we use the term acid test.
Okay.
To basically convey what Mahak does.
How about benchmark?
Benchmark. Okay, something to benchmark something with. All right. Let's use that for now. So we benchmark things. That's fine. And until we find the right word, because we're going to need this word as we go forward. And this translation is not giving us what we really need here. So if God should place a touchstone in your heart, and in this case, the touchstone is also that benchmark. So if he places a benchmark within you, you'll then tell doubt and certainty apart. Of course, if you have something to benchmark things against, you can easily tell what am I certain about, what am I doubtful, right? So think about things that you're certain about right now. Right now, for instance, right now, all of us are certain about gravity, right? Why? Because every single one of us have a way to show and demonstrate that gravity exists, right? We know it. Now, how about, let me ask you about, if I were to ask how much carbon dioxide is in our air right now? We're not quite sure about that. Perhaps we say that the pollution level has gone down since COVID-19. We know it's there, it's doubtful, it's at night. It's been a very nice and breezy day today. Maybe we didn't get that much carbon dioxide here and so forth. or maybe Rasul has a lot of carbon dioxide over there, you know.
Mhm.
So, but again, it's these simple examples. I want to make sure we understand. There's something that we benchmark and we're certain about it, and there are certain things that we can't benchmark them. Now, here's what happens. All of a sudden, I come back and say, well, there is a test that you can do. Let's say that there is something that actually takes something in the form of taking air around you, and it would come back and say, or maybe, you know, there is a fan. I know Dyson has a fan which says that, you know, it can determine the amount of carbon dioxide that is in your air. Okay, fine. Now I'm certain. Now I have something to benchmark things against, and I can come back and say, within this degree of certainty, there is like 5% of carbon dioxide in the air. Okay. Now, let's use that example as we're going forward. Like when hair gets in your mouth, now this is Rumi's example, you know, to spit it out before it slips below. So he's saying that doubt are things that we can somehow tangibly feel. And this is a very good example. Every time that, you know, if a hair goes in our mouth, we immediately know it. Why? Because it has no place to be there. Okay. So like when a hair gets in your mouth, you know, to spit it out before it slips below. Among 100 morsels, just one hair, each man can sense it if he should take care. So yes, in our mouth, there are so many different, you know, parts and you know, salivas and stuff like that, and our teeth and our gums and all that. And if this one little thing, if it gets in there, we know exactly the fact that it shouldn't be there. So he's saying that there are things that we do have which can help us determine what we're certain about and what we should doubt. Okay. These senses are the ladders of this world. From heaven, separate ladders God has hurled. So now he's saying that the fact that we have senses in our bodies are the things that actually help us get better in our daily lives. However, there is another ladder that we're trying to get to, and we're trying to find it, that it allows us to actually start elevating upwards, right? Physicians treat and keep your body well, but just God's friend can save your soul from hell. Now he's talking about that if you get ill, you go to a doctor, but if your soul is ill, and that doesn't mean you know, when it comes down to psychiatry or psychology, he's talking about from the fact that your soul understands, or you're feeling that there are things within you that you need to find out with your heart and soul, and you aren't, or you can't. This is why you start turning into, you know, books like the Masnavi and Rumi. So it's God's friend, and he uses the phrase God's friend, and in this case, it's Anbiya in Farsi, and which means the fact that, you know, these are the people who have gone through different elevation of their spirits so that they can actually have the right soul, and they're at the right level. Good health is equated with strong physique. A healthy soul will make your body weak. Why does he say that? He's saying that the fact that we feed our body a lot, and now he doesn't say that, you know, you shouldn't take care of your body, you shouldn't be healthy and all that. This feeding the body that he's talking about in here is when we are constantly obeying our ego's will. So every time our ego tells us that I need this, let's just put it this way. If you crave something that craving is something that of your senses and of what is within you as a sense of wanting something more. If you're hungry, a piece of bread can easily feed you and take care of your hunger. But there are times that your hunger wants you to have a 7-course meal. And there's no issue here with respect to having a 7-course meal. I want to make sure we're clear about that. What Rumi is indicating here is that every time you bow for that, every time that you want it, you say yes to it, and that becomes a must in your life, then that is where the danger lies. So that's why he's saying that, you know, when it comes down to a healthy soul, your body is going to get weak. Why? Because your body, for instance, wants certain things, and you're like, no, I'm not going to give it to you. I will not obey this. Any sort of addiction, let's say, majority of the addictions that people have, whether it's to the alcohol, whether it is to drugs, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's to food, whether it's to sex, all of these things, all these forms of addictions come from an unhealthy ego. And of course, an unhealthy soul right behind it. Because all of these things are the wanting more of our ego, and our ego keep on trying to feed itself.
An ego that cannot use a brake to brake and not go forward with something.
Not only cannot use a brake, it will never be fulfilled. Would never be fulfilled. Every time you think about this, and sometimes I think about it. I remember when I had my first job here in this country at a Winchell's Donuts, and I was getting minimum wage back then, which was $3.25. Now, go do the math and you'll know how old I am. $3.25 was minimum wage back then. And I remember I was thinking that if I could only get $5 an hour, I would be very comfortable. Well, guess what? I did get $5 an hour, and then I wanted $10 an hour. And from there, I wanted 20, and then 50, and then 100, and then, 200. And, it just never ended. It keeps on feeding it. Why? Because I fed my life. And I did it. All of us doing it. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. It becomes bad when it becomes a necessity and a must. Whereas I would break every rule and I would, challenge every situation, no matter what goes around me, in order to achieve what I have. And sometimes I challenge my own morals, and that is the bad part. So all of us, Rumi is not against wealth or wealthy people or having, wealth or anything like that. He's not against it. You will read it. You will read examples of it. He's going to give you guys a bunch of examples from, merchants in the bazaar. He will. What he's against is when this wealth becomes your objective, and it objectifies yourself and your inner soul. And it starts affecting your connection with God. This is where the issue comes. Okay. So let's go forward. Bodies are wrecked along the mystic way. For their destruction, treasures brought as pay. For gold, your house is knocked down to the ground, to be rebuilt, foundations deep and sound. Now, see how he's using the example of destruction, the fact that, in order for you to arrive at that, mystical, achievement in your journey, and again, being one with the beloved and all that, you need to go through a destruction. Just like in this life, when you're trying to build a beautiful house, the very first thing you do, anybody who's done remodeling, you guys know that. And I'm sure all of you guys have experienced this. Every time you remodel, the first thing you do, you demolish. And he's telling us, in order for us to have a more beautiful soul, we have to first go through a demolition. And the demolition comes from the demolition of the mind and the ego. We need to demolish these two in order to rebuild ourselves again, which is the most difficult task to do, because we are so accustomed and so perfectly, aligned with what we have learned and experienced in our lives that we don't want to change anything. I always ask this question, and I'm going to ask you guys this question. Think about your own house, the estate of your own house at the moment, the way you arrange your house, the way you arrange your furniture. And now think about the state of your own mind and tell me, how similar are they? Well, don't tell me, just tell yourselves. The fact of the matter is that I guarantee you there is over 80% similarity between the state of your mind and the state of your physical household right now. If your house is completely simple and modern, this is exactly how you live your life, simple and modern. If your house is completely, full of, let's say artwork and everything, then that means that, your life is full of color and your thoughts are always artsy and colory and all that stuff. I use this, whenever I go to somebody's house, I shouldn't say this, but, I can't help it. I'll explain. You can easily tell what state they're in. If you go to somebody's house and their house is complete mess, chances are that they're in a pretty messy state themselves.
Can I just
I'm sorry?
Interject something quick in here?
Sure.
About watching somebody's messy this, messy that. I've seen this on people's desks that don't organize my desk, you will confuse me. So you're reading exactly into it what we learned not to read. Right.
But again, it's an observation. Again, just for me, now I should say I learned this when I attended Tony Robbins' mastery classes. One of the things that he tells you when it comes down to it is body language and just the environment. Now, somebody's desk is a perfect example. If somebody's desk is completely messy, chances are that that person is completely inorganized when it comes down to doing what they're supposed to do. And there, you personally would hesitate to actually count on them getting to you what you need if they're supposed to report to you. Again, all of these things, I'm getting off the topic. It's just the fact that what he's telling us right now is that in order for us to rebuild this soul, we need to first go through a reckoning. And going through a reckoning means that the fact that we consciously have to challenge our mind and our ego. We need to do that. So for gold, your house is knocked down to the ground to be rebuilt, foundations deep and sound. He cuts off water, drains the riverbed, with the purest water fills it up instead. So back in the old days, people did not have sewer system or the water system that would come to the houses. Some of you guys may remember, there used to be these waterways that would come to the houses, and you would fill in certain storage places, and that's that was good for a week or for 2 weeks or something like that. And once in a while they had to clean those areas because the water would get contaminated with all sorts of bacteria and all that. He's saying that you first, in order to clean that, you cut off water. You cut it off, you allow the things to drain, you clean it up, and then you let the water in. cutting off water is again coming back and telling your ego, no. That is you cutting off water.
That's a great analogy, by the way.
Thank Rumi for that. So
Yeah, that's
again,
a great analogy.
It is so this is why we fast. Every religion in this world has fasting. Every religion has fasting. And the reason they have fasting is because fasting is a way of us trying to say no and somehow go through a cleansing period. Unfortunately, this meaning has been so misunderstood that, like, I know in countries like, you know, in United Arab Emirates, they work at night and they sleep during the day because they can't eat during the day. I don't get it, but it works for them. Good for them. Or back home in Iran, it was the same way. Before sunrise, we would eat so much. We would eat like a full-fledged meal, and then we would sleep. And then again, at night, we would eat a lot as well. Not the right way, not the right thing. So, just a couple more lines and I'll let you guys go. I'm sorry, this section is both was important and we needed to make sure that we go through it. So he uses now another example. He says, he flays your skin to find the blade inside. Fresh skin will heal the wound, however wide. Now he's using our own body as an example, that in order for you to heal it, you first have to clean what's in the skin, and you know, perhaps, you know, make the cut a little larger in order to clean it, and then eventually it would heal itself. Okay. He'll raise the castle of those faithless powers, but then rebuild them with 1,000 towers. Now, if he's talking about people back then when they would go to wars, they would first destroy the castles that, you know, those people who were there war against were in it, and then they would rebuild them beautifully the way they wanted it. Who can discern when acts seem arbitrary? What I've just said shows that it's necessary. So, for our Farsi-speaking audience, there is a word that Hafez uses a lot, and it's called kharabat. Kharabat means the place that is completely rubble. Okay. The reason that if you read Hafez's poetry, he refers to kharabat a lot is because he says that in order for me to rebuild, I have to first, you know, destroy everything. The other reason that this kharabat place is such holy place for Hafez is because imagine if you were in New York City, and all of you guys have been to New York City, I'm sure. In New York, in the morning, you'll know it's the morning because you see rays of sun here and there, but there are buildings all around you. And then the sun comes up probably sometime at noon. You may get something straight from the sun if you are standing somewhere that is, you know, vastly away from the buildings. And eventually, all you know is the time, but you don't see the sun as much as you should if you're standing in the streets. Kharabat is the place where there's no buildings. So because there are no buildings, you're constantly getting the sun and the rays of the sun. Now, if you were to think about your soul as this kharabat place, and the fact that your soul needs to connect with the source, and if we use the symbolism of the source as the sun, in order for you to get a direct access to sun, you need to have harabat, or else you're going to get shadows. Am I making sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I know this is a lot to swallow for this session. It's just that we have to discuss these because it's important for us to get them. So now he comes back and he's like, okay, what I've just said shows that it's necessary. All right, sometimes like this, and then the opposite. God's way bewilders those who are traveling it. Now he says, there's sometimes things happen the way I just said it, and sometimes it happens the opposite way, because this is how God determines how he wants you to grow, in a way, okay? Not the false ways of those whose backs are turned, but the amazement that love's drunks have learned. So he's saying that it's not when I say that sometimes it happens this way or another way, the other way is not the ways of people who have turned their backs to the sun or to the God or to the source. It's to those who are willing to accept what comes their way and flow with it. Okay. One faces the beloved constantly. The other chooses just himself to see. So there's a difference between these two people. One is somebody who's constantly facing his beloved, and the other one who's facing himself. Now, again, as I'm going to use Matin's analogy, your heart sometimes is pointing towards yourself or it's pointing towards God. Once it's pointing towards God, your GPS is working and your transmission is happening. It's working towards yourself, your transmission is to self, you're just boosting your ego. Observe which way the people choose to turn. While serving others, learn how to discern. Now, he's saying the way you can actually start finding out how people are is which way they're turning. So remember, he was telling us that, how do you know that somebody goes to a mosque versus somebody, whether he's a good person or not, is like, look which way he's turning. Look which way he's getting his energy from. Is his energy coming from the divine source, or if it's getting from his own ego? The devils make themselves look just like men. Don't shake hands with just anyone again. So in this case, now he's saying that, be careful. Don't become friends just with anyone, because in this case, the devils that he's referring to is people with, this devilish attribute of ego within themselves. The hunter blows a whistle near his prey, deceiving thus the bird who's led astray. It hears what sounds like calling from a friend and lands inside his trap to meet its end. So he's talking about how I think it's common to, ducks are hunted this way, or some other kinds of birds are hunted this way as well, or at least they used to. Okay. A wrench may steal the words of dervishes. Now, in this case, it's saying that a wrench is a person who is trying to portray himself as a holy man. Darvish in this sentence is talking about somebody who has somehow maintained a kind of a restraint on his ego. So a wretch may steal the words of dervishes to chant all tales to simple audiences. The actions of the genuine spread light, while false pretenders just distort what's right. So again, he's warning us about people who may look like a dervish, but they are about to cheat everyone. And he's talking about now we need to start observing which way they are facing and what are the actions that they're doing. We need to start looking at their actions. Low beggars with stuffed dolls, they feel no shame. Ahmad, some claimed, was Bu Musailem's name. Now, in this case, he's just basically coming back, and Bu Musailem is talking about somebody who was a Muslim during Prophet Muhammad's time, and then he went on his way and he claimed prophecy at some point. So he's saying that there are people which he is calling them low beggars, somebody who is a low life beggar. Now, beggar is a low life in his mind, but now this is lower than the low. Is like, in this case, somebody like that came and tried to make himself look like, you know, Prophet Muhammad, again, in the surface and in the face. He was like called liars. Go ahead.
Sorry, I said like a false prophet.
Thank you. So he was called liar soon and entered hell, while Ahmad gave the world those who knew well. So basically, eventually, whoever, you know, believed him was, you know, led to a bad path. But, you know, Prophet Muhammad, that's another name for Ahmad, is the one who actually was able to give everybody the world. The wine of love's flask smells of musk that's pure, while other wines all stink of foul manure. And that's exactly what it says in Farsi as well. I'm sorry. So basically it's saying that now, in order for you to understand what's going on, you need to open your eyes. You need to start using your senses the right way. So you need to look what direction people are actually facing. What are their actions? What are they in their actions? What are they feeding? Think about it. Just think about it. Sometimes somebody may come to your house and they're like, I'm going to help you. And they would genuinely try to help, you think, in your mind. But as they are doing what they're doing, you start noticing, and I can guarantee you, and I have had this in my life myself, that they are solely feeding their own ego. Not every extending hand is a hand that is trying to help you. Sometimes that hand is just using you to feed your energy into themselves, and meanwhile leaving you empty. Okay. This was a lot, I know, but it was necessary. The next story is, of course, the story about the Jewish king who's out of, you know, fanaticism would kill Christians. The word Jewish, again, that's the word that in Farsi version, Rumi uses Juhud. And he literally gave us all of this explanations about words and the meanings behind words and how you identify with them and how you perceive them and how these words can make you feel and how you need to disembark from what they feel within you so that you can completely free yourself, because he's going to use that here in this story as well.
Mohsen, before we go, the other word I thought of while you were reading that the rest of the poem was for the gold test. I think in English don't we use a lot of times if so-and-so passes the litmus test?
Litmus test, okay.
A lot of times it's like, you know, I think that might be the equivalent. I don't know, maybe everyone else can weigh in, but you know, when you're trying to see if someone passes the litmus test, is what are they passing the bar they need to be passing? Okay. Whether it's,
so I just wrote down litmus test and also benchmarking. We're going to use both of them. I'm going to remember that and I'll use it. But eventually, you guys, just like how we settled on the soul and the spirit, we will eventually settle on one. And yeah, that's a good one too.
I'm good with benchmark. I was just
I know, but because here's the deal: these words are going to show up again. it keeps on showing up. And we need to have an agreement. And, again, just make that agreement and go forward. Another thing I wanted to tell you guys, go ahead.
That word touchstone that he uses is actually a good translation for Mahak.
Which one?
Touchstone.
Okay.
That he uses that in the translation in here, because I don't know whether you all know that Mahak is actually a stone that jewelers have, that when you bring the gold, they rub it on it and they find out its purity or what it has.
Right.
True. You're absolutely right. But
Yeah.
Again, it's all about finding, understanding the true meaning of what he means. So
right.
That's right. We could use touchstone as well. We could go with that one as well. But maybe I'll let you guys know a week in advance. There is so remember I told you guys about the book of Rumi and Friend.
Yeah.
And, Mr. Zavosh. And of course, I see Mr. Zavosh Tuesday nights and Friday nights on the Farsi class. And he's also been an inspiration for this class for me, which is really, I'm very grateful for him. He has a very, very beautiful talk about ego, which I want to invite him to actually take, perhaps an hour of our discussion, maybe in the next couple of weeks. I'll let you guys know when. I need to coordinate this with him for a 45-minute talk about ego, because he's done an extensive research around it from Jung, as well as what Eastern philosophy talks about it, as well as what Rumi says and so forth. I think it's something that's very beneficial to all of us, because again, as we go forward, all these different elements of ego and the heart and the mind and our soul and all that, and again phrases like touchstone and litmus test and benchmarking and the destroyer or the kharabat or all of these things, we're going to start using them in a very it's going to happen more often, and I want you guys to have a solid understanding of it. So you guys perhaps now you understand that why I was so adamant that if you guys still want to invite some of your friends to this is the time. If we pass 2-3 months from now, for someone to totally start coming and grasping all of these meanings, they're going to have difficult time. I'm not saying it's going to be impossible. It's just that majority of what we're getting is through the discussions and your contribution as well. And the discussion itself is something that's given us a lot of fruit for this. So it's important for folks to get that context so that they can better understand the meanings. So I'll let you guys know when that is, to make sure that, you've certainly, just arrange everything, every element in the universe to be here wholeheartedly. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great rest of the week.
Yeah,
Take
you
care.
too.
Bye.